you spoke before about the success, so-called, of the 9/11 attacks in hitting at the U.S. and in demonstrating to a Muslim audience that al-Qaeda could, effect such an attack. On the other hand, the response was the destruction of the al-Qaeda base in Afghanistan, the end of the regime that supported al-Qaeda's presence there, some limited, now fugitive presence for al-Qaeda in the border areas between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Did they overreach in that sense? Is there any sort of reckoning among jihadi or al-Qaeda thinkers that the U.S. response has been effective in hitting back at them and driving them away from what was a reasonably good situation they had when they were running around free in Afghanistan?
I think that the ideologues who argued for overreach, that al-Qaeda had overreached, were pretty much liquidated or annihilated by al-Qaeda itself. I mean, there's a famous man who, in 1980s, who led primarily the Arab effort in the jihad against the Soviets at the time. He's a Palestinian, a Muslim brother named Abdullah Azzam. After the end of the war against the Soviets in 1989 in Afghanistan, he basically did not want to go global. He did not want attacks to target both the Saudi regime or, for that matter, the United States. He wanted to keep jihads local. And he was killed. And there is a question mark as to who killed him, but a lot of people assume that bin Laden had something to do with it, or certainly Ayman al-Zawahiri, the number two man in al-Qaeda. The loss of Afghanistan has been a blow to al-Qaeda, but you do have ideologues, Abu Mus'ab al-Suri, for instance, who have said, well, we don't need a central base anymore, although he did lament the loss of Afghanistan. It's okay to build separate cell-like structures in many, many different countries. And that these cells would be semi-autonomous or almost completely autonomous, and that they would attack the West and also the local regimes on their own. Now, what's changed the debate considerably is the fact that Iraq, until quite recently, for al-Qaeda was considered a success. It was a place where a traditional kind of jihad could be waged, where you had Muslim army, or at least Muslim irregular army, fighting in the Americans and in infidel force. And Iraq was a galvanizing and cause that could bring lots of Sunnis and Salafis especially into Iraq. Now that's changed again, because the Sunnis of Iraq themselves seem to no longer want al-Qaeda there. So the debate about Afghanistan is linked to what's happening in Iraq and is linked to what various cells are doing around the world, and is a dynamic debate. It's not a debate that just ends with the loss of Afghanistan, because they feel that that was replaced by Iraq.
Let me ask you, what's left for al-Qaeda? They had this attack. No doubt they're hoping for others and planning for them. But the ideology, the worldview, the ability to implant themselves somewhere and act on the basis of the control of some large area of territory doesn't really seem feasible for them in the future. It's all well to talk about electronic jihad and communicating messages over the internet, but as far as the organization is concerned, is it still existing as an organization? Do they have a way of envisioning a future that could revive them in some way? Or has the whole notion of jihad, certainly which emerged from al-Qaeda, has this been transformed by new circumstances?
Well, for a while, when the leadership of al-Qaeda was not producing videos or messages, one felt that, that they had ebbed. But we're speaking now in May of 2008, and recently, in the last couple of months, there have been a number of statements that both bin Laden and his number two man, Ayman al-Zawahiri, have been able to produce. So it seems of late that there's been an effort by al-Qaeda's leadership to re-energize the movement through its center, through the leadership at the center. the future of the movement itself as an organized political movement, I think, is very bleak. But as an idea, as a set of ideas, and as an ideology that can mobilize certain people, not large numbers of people, but an elite group of people, is always there. Okay, so I wouldn't really write Al-Qaeda off so quickly yet, because the situation is still changing in the Middle East.
Let me thank Bernard Haykel for joining us today. On behalf of the National September 11th Memorial and Museum, I'm Clifford Shannon.